an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Crooked Kingdom, chapters 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. In these chapters, so much happens, but the main thing, of course, is that Matthias is gone. And I am real sad about it, and I hate it so much. Guys, I don't do well with, couples that are finally getting to be together, getting wrenched apart again. And the only thing that's saving me here from, just really being mad is the fact that I don't feel like I'm being fucked with, and that they genuinely are saying goodbye until someday when Nina dies. This is brutal. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Jaime for commissioning this episode. Guys, this is, I feel like I was just saying how I would like to feel like somebody in this crew was in danger. And I take it back. I just got through saying how much I like Matthias, how much character development he has experienced, how much he's grown as a person and really is trying to do better and fight against impulses that he understands now were forced upon him as propaganda. He is just starting to come around and get it. And then he is taken down, and I just... All right, so let's start off talking about Inej. Inej is up against Dunyasha, and she is fucking killing it. She is doing really, really well. She manages to draw first blood, which Dunyasha treats as more like, oh, aren't you precious? You got one on me. But then when she draws blood again on the other calf, Dunyasha is seeing it a little bit less as amusing and more of maybe even borderline embarrassing. Dunyasha really believes that she is touched by the gods and meant for greatness and an actual she believes that she is royalty. And it's really remarkable how Inej approaches all of this, because she doesn't just dismiss this girl as oh, don't we all wish we were royalty, or don't we all think we're someone special? She more looks at it isn't it sad that she really seems to believe this, and that not even I'm about to beat her and she's going to be disabused of this notion that she has, but more isn't it sad that she believes this and has wrapped her whole identity around it? Because she truly seems to think that there are innocents out there, and that she can keep her own hands clean by going after those who go after innocents. And she doesn't understand the complexity of life and the fact that you don't get to make those kinds of calls once you get to a certain place, and once you've been put under certain pressures. There is simply it's sort of, when you're desperate enough, you are going to do what you need to do. And this is a choice that you have to make. If you are willing to die in order for your morals, or if you are willing to protect the people that you love and care about and protect yourself at the expense of having blood on your hands. And it's treated as a noble thing to die without having bloodied your hands in a way that is borderline immoral or just a gray area, you know. But the older I get, the more I start to understand that choosing to die instead is sometimes really selfish. You are more concerned with your own purity than you are about protecting people who maybe can't protect themselves. And Inej is there. She understands this and is like, you know, I have done what I can to protect my friends, to protect myself once I actually was given some power to do so. And I am not going to apologize for the skills that I have accrued over time that, yes, led to the deaths of many people. I killed many people. When the alternative was letting myself be beaten and raped repeatedly, I am not going to feel sorry that I chose to end lives rather than live like that myself. And I really love how much Inej thinks about this throughout this fight and this conversation. I'm going to read this little bit here. So let's see. The blood you spill is the blood of kings. You are not fit for such a gift. Inej felt almost sorry for her. Dunyasha really believed she was the Lance off air, and maybe she was. But wasn't that what every little girl dreamed? That she'd wake and find herself a princess? Maybe there were people who lived those lives. Maybe this girl was one of them. But what about the rest of us? What about the nobodies and the nothings, the invisible girls? We learn to hold our heads as if we wear crowns. We learn to wring magic from the ordinary. That was how you survived when you weren't chosen, when there was no royal blood in your veins, when the world owed you nothing. You demanded something of it anyway. And finally, I have learned humility, Dunyasha said, and now you will learn that some are meant to serve and some are meant to rule. Perhaps the saints had chosen Dunyasha as their vessel. Despite Inej's prayers and penance, maybe judgment had come at last. I am not sorry, she realized. She had chosen to live freely as a killer rather than die quietly as a slave, and she could not regret that. She would go to her saints with a ready spirit and hope they would receive her. I love her so much, guys. I really just love her. So Inej is fighting Dunyasha. She's managing to get the edge on her by figuring out what her tell is, which is what Kaz had pointed out to her in a previous chapter. She tries to flatter herself that she's not actually she doesn't want to be a regular mortal. She doesn't want to believe that she has a tell. But she does. And Kaz tells her it's that she squares her shoulders right before she makes a move, as if she is a dancer about to go up on stage. And she's really startled, you know? She's really oh, what? So she watches Dunyasha and realizes that the one that Dunyasha has is that she takes a deep breath, deep inhalation right before she goes on stage. And it is really helpful. It turns things around for her completely in this fight. And it makes it so that Dunyasha is sort of I think she can tell that she has given something away, but she just doesn't know what it is because she's never fought anybody who has gotten any sort of drop on her ever. And so, in order to reestablish her authority as the better fighter here, she does something dirty and decides that she's going to use a powder to try and blind Inej. She unfurled her palm and released a sharp gust of air. Inej saw a cloud of red dust and recoiled from it, but it was too late. And she goes blind temporarily from this thing. I just really feel, Dunyasha, that you don't get to lord it over everyone that you're a better fighter when you're willing to resort to these kinds of tactics. I'm just saying, I really don't feel like you get to have any sort of upper hand over anyone, because like, it just feels like such a low down, dirty trick, you know? I just am surprised. And this is sort of a thing with people though. If you really do believe that you are more worthy than other people, then you can explain away the fact that you resort to tactics like this by saying that you are simply like restoring the natural order, right? So I think that's probably what she tells herself, but it is really fucked up to me that she has done nothing but talk shit. And yet she's carrying around this kind of like, this would be one thing to use if you were in a fight against multiple people and you needed to bring a couple down and put them out of commission for a minute while you dealt with another one. I'm not going to be mad at you for trying to even the odds out, but doing it in a one-on-one fight with somebody that you've just tried so many times to like demean. No, I don't think so. So in the end, what happens is that oh my God, Inej. I was going to say Inari, and then I was like, that's not right. I don't even know where I got that name. That's from something. Inej realizes that even though she can't see, even though she can't exactly fight back right now, what she can do is use her knowledge of these rooftops and her understanding of what the structure is like that she has gotten to know over time here. And she can let this woman be her own undoing. And so she steps back and lets Dunyasha step on a spot on the roof that is very unstable, that Inej knows is very unstable. And Dunyasha goes flying off the side of the roof and doesn't even scream on her way down. Like, this is sincerely some discipline, you know, right up until the end. She doesn't even scream, and then winds up a splat on the ground. And I have to admit, I was a little bit surprised that this is the goodbye to this character already. I kind of expected her to be an ongoing thing, and that she would, rather than resort to something like this, that she would wind up running away after disabling Inej enough, even, but she herself is like, you know, very wounded. And she'd kind of like be worrying Inej's steps for a while over time. But no, she's gone. She's out of the picture. And I'm like, not sorry. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that at all. But yeah, this is really quite an interesting, like, surprising turn of events to me. So I'm just super, like, proud of Inej here, because she just internalizes some advice that Kaz gave her, and it really seems to actually work out. So, you know, good for her. Then we go on to the next chapter, Jesper, who, he is supposed to be meeting Inej, and both of them, it turns out, are running late. So it winds up like working out, because Jesper does what Wyland says. And this is the ending of this book is coming down to a lot of characters taking the advice of people around them that they kind of were loath to take, because it, you know, it just taking advice in general is something some people are not good at doing. I can be that way. I hate to admit this, but honestly, people will be like offering advice, and it's not even that I think that they don't know what they're talking about exactly. It's that sometimes you don't want to admit that you didn't think of a thing. Or this is a whole separate issue from advice that you have thought of and you tried and it didn't work, obviously. But there will be things that people suggest that are so obvious that you can't help but like judge yourself that it didn't occur to you. And so you kind of like push back against it, even though there's not really any particularly good reason other than your pride for you to reject it. And I really like that here it's Inez. She's internalizing Kaz's advice. Jesper listens to Wyland's and like is like, well, maybe that is what it is. And we have the whole thing with Matthias like growing hugely as a person because of Nina, and Nina understanding what Matthias would want and need as well. Like, it's just people hearing each other and being better and listening to one another. And that's just what life is about, right? Like, when it comes down to it, if you go through life feeling like you don't have anything to learn, I just don't want to know you, pretty much. That seems like a terrible way to live. So let's talk about Jesper, because he is watching everything that's, going down here. And the ending of the chapter with Inej says Kueilbo had to die tonight. And I was like, excuse me, are they going to kill this kid? Like, it didn't fit, but I was also like, oh my God, is that part of the deal? And as Jesper is running to do his duty, basically, he is thinking about what went on with his dad, and he's worrying, I think, a little bit about whether or not, if he dies here, he's going to have died not really having settled things with his dad. And Wyland encouraged him to have this conversation with his father. And he's sort of glad he did, but he's also kind of like, yeah, but now everything is ruffled up again. There's a sort of, what's the word I want? There's this delusion, really, that's what it is a delusion that we tell ourselves that just getting everything out in the open will be easier, that it will make us feel better. And the thing is, that is not untrue. It does eventually, usually. But in the meantime, you have to cope with the thing that has just been brought out into the open. It is a process. It's not like you have, an infection and you open an infection and clear out the pus and the dead tissue and put a poultice over it and all of a sudden you're all better. No, you cleared it out, but you still have healing to do. It's still been, there's a trauma on your body that you need to be patient with and not push and not abuse. And that is what I think people forget, is that they expect when you bring everything out that you're suddenly going to do better. And that's not that's part of what going to therapy is all about. You can bring up a lot of stuff that once it's out and you really chew it over time, you can make progress. But in the short term, the first few sessions of therapy, and by few, I mean 10, are just saddening. Because it's you pulling up all of this stuff that you often have laid a nice layer of concrete over and let set, and pulling it out again is getting out the jackhammer and digging it all up and destroying this seemingly nice smooth surface that you had. Now, of course, under the surface, there is just rot and decay and horror, but you tell yourself it doesn't matter, because nobody can see it, and you don't have to deal with it. Of course, you will have to deal with it eventually, but whatever. You tell yourself. And that's sort of where Jesper is with what happened with his dad, is that he's like, we had a really nice smooth layer of concrete, and now it's all fucked up. And I know this is really what we're supposed to do, but I can't help but feel like maybe we should not have done it. I don't know. So the whole... there's really... what's the word I want? There's some distraction happening in his mind. He has to get his head right here. And the reasoning is that he has to continue to pretend to be somebody who is a little bit higher class so that the Stodwatch will take him seriously. They call him Sir a few times. And the reasoning, he needs them to get him out of where he's at in this auction hall / temple church thing. And he knows that unless they don't think he is part of Kaz's overall scheme, they're not going to help his ass at all. So he tells them that he has really bad diarrhea because he ate at Sten's. I love this so much. Sten's Stockpot. The grunt winced. Why would you go there? And I love this, that he uses the name of a place that he knows everybody is going to know and everybody is aware is no good. You know, it's like, no shade because I love Taco Bell, but if it's like me being like, I had Taco Bell earlier and I really need to use the bathroom, and you're like immediately like, oh God, okay, hold on. There is no stopping and being like, really? Oh God, what do you think it was? You don't have to ask any questions. You're like, oh, it could be anything. And he manages to get these guys to believe him and hustle him out of here, and winds up having to attack one of them. And he's looped his arm around the guard's neck, applying pressure until his body went limp. I love how, like, matter-of-fact this is. There's not a lot of lead-up to it. Jesper slipped the leather strips from around his wrists, secured the guard's hands behind his back, and stuffed the kerchief from his neck into the guard's mouth. Then he rolled the body behind the altar. Sleep well, Jesper said. He felt bad for the guy. Not bad enough to wake him up and untie him, but still. I love that. So, surprise, fucking, what's his name? The Cairgud soldier who was exiting the house of the White Rose. This guy comes up behind him and like tosses him across the room. This guy is gigantic. And he is Shu. And Jesper has to fight this dude, and it is not going awesome. The guy is just really strong. Jesper doesn't have a gun on him, and he had like thought about grabbing the Stodwatch's one, but thought it wasn't going to, like, because it turns out Inej is going to be meeting him with a gun, so he doesn't feel like he needs a second one. He's about to meet up with her and have, like, you know, it makes sense. He flung Jesper against the wall, and Jesper released a yelp of pain, wondering if he'd broken a rib. It's good for you. Jogs the liver. I love that this is the shit he's like thinking about. Jesper saw the giant's fist draw back, the gleam of metal on his fingers. They gave him real brass knuckles, he realized in horror. They built them into his hand. He ducked left just in time. The soldier's fist struck the wall behind his head with a thunderous crack. And Jesper realizes as the guy inhales that he has scented him. Like, that's how he tracked him down. So he is not, like, kind of pinned finally, and he remembers that he has the chemical weevil in his pocket, one of the vials of it. He'd fidgeted with one when he and his father were arguing. Now Jesper's fingers fumbled in his pants pocket, hands closing over the glass vial. Parem, Jesper blurted. It was one of the only Shu words he knew. The soldier paused, fist in midair. He cocked his head to the side. Jesper made a show of parting his lips and pretending to shove something between them. The soldier's eyes widened and his grip loosened as he tried to tear Jesper's hand away. The Cairgud made a sound, maybe a grunt, maybe the beginning of a protest. It didn't much matter. With his other hand, Jesper smashed the glass vial into the soldier's open mouth. So what Jesper does here, I guess, is try and fool this guy into thinking he has just taken Jurda Parem and is about to fuck the dude up. And the guy is trying to stop him. And while he's distracted trying to do that, Jesper nabs him in the mouth with the vial of the weevil, which he really is hopeful he didn't get on himself because it could cause him fucking damage. So at first, it doesn't seem to do anything. There's just glass all over the guy's mouth, which is bad. I mean, who wants glass in their mouth? But otherwise, it doesn't seem to do anything. And then all of a sudden, Jesper is like realizing that he thought the guard was shaking him, or the soldier was shaking him. And then he realizes, no, he's not shaking me. He's just straight up shaking. And all of a sudden there's this like hiss, like heat, like something being dropped onto a frying pan. And all of this pink foam starts to come up out of his mouth and he just collapses. Oof, that sounds like a brutal way to go. Yikes. So he runs up to Inej. She's about to be like, where have you been? And he just says gun and takes it from her. He realizes that he is supposed to shoot Kuweyubo, and that he cannot see him from the position that he's in because he's late. Kuwei was supposed to be in this one particular spot, and he's not. And Kuwei is like around this corner. Jesper knew the layout of the cathedral well enough. He knew it was a straight shot up the aisle to where the auction block stood. He could see the second button of Kuwei's shirt in his mind's eye. Impossible. A bullet had only one trajectory. But what if that bullet could be guided? Jesper? Said Inej from behind him. He raised his rifle. It was an ordinary firearm, but he'd converted it himself. There was only a single round inside it, non-lethal, a mixture of wax and rubber. If he missed, someone could be hurt badly, but if he didn't shoot, a lot of people would be hurt. Hell, maybe if I miss Kuwei, I'll take out one of Van Eck's eyes. So he decides that he is going to take the shot and try and guide the bullet. With all his will, he focused on its wax casing and pulled to the left, the shot still ringing in his ears. He felt the bullet turn, focus on that button, the second button, a little piece of wood, the threads holding it in place. It's not a gift, it's a curse. But when it came down to it, Jesper's life had been full of blessings. His father, his mother, Inej, Nina, Matthias leading them across the muddy canal, Kaz, even Kaz, with all his cruelties and failings, had given him a home and a family in the dregs when Ketterdam might have swallowed him whole. And Wylan, who had understood before Jesper ever had that the power inside him might be a blessing too. "What did you just do?" asked Inej. "The same thing I always do. I took a shot." So then we go to Kaz, and he is standing next to Kuwei. And the bullet strikes where it's supposed to and jabs a syringe into his arm. And so this is when I understood what was happening here. Like, obviously, the first bullet, like when it says from Jesper's perspective that it's harmless, I'm realizing that what Inej had said in her POV wasn't precisely true. He didn't need to, quote, die. But once he jabs Kuwei with this syringe, I'm like, oh, okay, they're going to chemically induce a death-like state and make it look like he has been shot and killed. And that is precisely what's happening. Because what they want to do is give Kuwei Yulbo a blank slate. They want him, for everybody in the world, to think that he's dead. And that way he can continue living his fucking life in peace and nobody's going to try and come after him. Now, I don't really know what they do about the fact that Kuwei was seen by the whole town and they know what he looks like. I guess they are just figuring that he can lay low and wear a disguise, or maybe they're going to tailor him or something. But for now, he is being given a shot that he did not have before. So Kaz yells for the medic. And it says, the little bald man stood paralyzed beside the stage where he'd been tending to Wylan, his face horror-stricken. So that's the first instinct that we get about how this is not a doctor with his head on straight. This is not a guy who's very good at staying cool under pressure. And that becomes more and more evident as this chapter continues. And as the chapter with Matthias unfolds. So Jesper finally joins them and realizes that the shot worked out and sees Wylan and asks, "Is all that real?" "I wanted it to be believable," said Wyland. "I admire your commitment to the craft," said Kaz. "Jesper, stay with Wyland. They're going to want to question him." So Matthias is the one that is assigned to Kuwei's body, to, to making sure that everybody believes that he is dead and that the body, quote unquote, the body is disposed of. And it is a foregone conclusion to everyone that he has been taken care of. They raced up the pinky nave and into the chapel, but the door to the street in the canal beyond was locked. Behind them, the door to the chapel banged shut. Pekka Rollins leaned back against it, surrounded by 4 of his Dime Lion crew. So at this point, Matthias is away with Kuwait. And we have Kaz here with Inej. This is a really intense chapter because it's the culmination of Kaz's carefully laid plans and his deep desire for revenge warring with his desire to not become a monster in Inej's eyes. And I say a monster in Inej's eyes very specifically because of the fact that he knows, according to many people, he is a monster already. Inej understands the necessity for killing and taking care of oneself. So, to a degree, she understands and excuses a lot of what he has done. But in terms of there being lines in the sand that nobody will cross, or that he doesn't want to cross because he knows that she will never forgive him, hurting a child is one of those things. And it's tough to watch this scene. Like, you know, at this point, I assume that what Kaz is saying isn't entirely true. But I didn't think that Kaz invented the fact that he had grabbed this kid. I kind of thought that he was like, ooh, do you hear that thunder? Yeah, it is pouring rain right now. I kind of thought that he was just saying what he needed to, but he was keeping the kid somewhere else and sending Rollins on a bit of a wild goose chase and holding on to this, what do you call it? Hostage, for the foreseeable future, you know, just basically as insurance. But it turns out that the whole thing is just invented, which is just so good. So Inej is like, when she spots Pekka Rollins, she immediately is about to try and jump into this fight. And Rollins tells her, like, no, this is between me and him. To which Kaz is like, you know what? He's right. And Rollins, when Kaz suggests a trade, is just like, I don't think that there's anything that you can tell me that is going to appeal to me more than just killing you right now. Like, what's better than that? And Kaz says it's about the Kalish Prince. And he says, yeah, what, 3 stories of paradise, the finest gambling den, you plant a bomb there or something? No, I mean the little Kalish Prince. Rollins stilled. Fond of sweets, red hair like his father, doesn't take very good care of his toys. Kaz reached into his coat and drew out a small crocheted lion. It was a faded yellow, its yarn mane tangled and stained by dark soil. Kaz let it drop to the floor. Rollins stared at it. What is that? He said, his voice little more than a whisper. Then, as if coming back to himself, he shouted, What is that? You know what it is, Rollins. And weren't you the one who told me how much alike you and Van Eck are? Men of industry, building something to leave behind. Both of you so concerned with your legacy. What good is all of that if there's no one to leave it to? So I found myself asking, just who is he building for? And Rollins is bugging out. Kaz has found the exact weak spot. The exact one. And Rollins tells him, I'll kill you in everything you love. And Kaz laughs and says the trick is not to love anything. There's no way, if you gut me right now, you'll ever find your son in time to save him. And he asks, what the hell do you want from me? And Kaz says, Kaz felt his humor slide away, felt that dark door open inside of him. I love that description, that there is like something behind a door, and it's not like it's inaccessible, but it's kept locked up very carefully. I want you to remember. Remember what? And then he starts describing the con. And it's really like awful to realize that this guy genuinely has no memory of the people that he's conned. It's understandable. I don't think like you really get... I don't think you're the kind of person that can pull cons and yet remember precisely everything about every person that you've conned, because that starts to come dangerously close to a kind of a conscience. But it is still really like proving Kaz's point, you know? And Pekka Rollins says, "You were two pigeons and I happened to be the one who plucked you. If it hadn't been me, it would have been someone else." That dark door opened wider. Kaz wanted to walk through it. He would never be whole. Geordie could never be brought back. But Pekka Rollins could learn the helplessness they'd known. "Well, it's your bad luck that it was you," he bit out. "Yours and your son's." "I think you're bluffing." Kaz smiled. "I buried your son," he crooned, savoring the words. "I buried him alive 6 feet beneath the earth in a field of rocky soil. I could hear him crying the whole time, begging for his father. 'Papa, Papa.' I've never heard a sweeter sound." And Inej over here is like looking at him like he's a stranger and has gone totally pale and just is like, "Kaz." And meanwhile, Kaz is totally focused on Rollins and the fact that he has that look on his face, that panic, that helplessness, desperation, all of it. He's seeing it, finally, everything that he has wanted. "It's a simple trade, Rollins. Just speak my brother's name and your son lives." "Brecker, tell me my brother's name," Kaz repeated. "How about another hint? You invited us to a house on Zelverstraat. Your wife played the piano. Her name was Margit. There was a silver dog, and you called your daughter Saskia. She wore a red ribbon in her braid. You see, I remember all of it. It's easy." "2 boys," he said frantically, searching for the memory. He whirled on Kaz, pointing. "I remember. 2 boys from Liege. You had a piddling little fortune. Your brother fancied himself a trader, wanted to be a merch and get rich like every other nub who steps off the brow bow in the barrel. Now tell me his name." Kaz and... "I can make you rich, Brecker. I can make myself rich. I can give you the barrel, whatever influences you never dreamed of, whatever you want. Bring my brother back from the dead. He was a fool, and you know it. He was like any other mark, thinking he was smarter than the system, looking to make quick coin. You can't fleece an honest man, Brecker. You know that." And it says maybe one day Kaz could forgive Geordie for not being the perfect brother he held in his heart. Maybe he could even absolve himself for being the kind of gullible, trusting boy who believed someone might simply want to be kind. But for Rollins, there would be no reprieve. So finally, "I don't know your brother's name. I don't remember. I was making a little scrub. I thought you two would have a rough week and head home to the country." "No, you didn't. You never gave us another thought." "Please, Kaz," whispered Inej, "don't do this. Don't be this." Rollins groaned. "I am begging you." "Are you? You son of a bitch. All this time talking while your boy is lost in the dark." Pekka glanced at his men. He rubbed his hands over his face. Then, slowly, his movements heavy, as if he had to fight every muscle of his body to do it, Rollins went to his knees. Kaz saw the dime lines shake their heads. Weakness never earned respect in the barrel, no matter how good the cause. "I am begging you, Brecker. He's all I have. Let me go to him. Let me save him." Kaz looked at Pekka Rollins, Jacob Hertzsoon, kneeling before him at last, eyes wet with tears, pain carved into the lines of his flushed face. Brick by brick. It was a start. "Your son is in the southernmost corner of Tarmaker's Field, 2 miles west of Applebrook. I've marked the plot with a black flag. If you leave now, you should get him in plenty of time." So he calls for a medic and takes off. And Kaz, when he's talking later to Inej about everything, Inej, first of all, she's like, "Will he get there in time?" And he says, "For what?" And she realizes, oh my God, you didn't do it. And he says, I've never even seen the kid. I guessed that he had a child. And everything he said that night made me think about it again. And she says, well, how did you know he didn't have a daughter? And he's like, well, the way he named his new gambling house, it just felt like that was what he was referencing. So she asks then, what will he find in the field? And he says, nothing. He'll spend hours digging and circling and panicking, and then he'll realize that there's nothing there. And yet, what he will be seen doing is rushing out of the city with a medic in tow. And every place that we started this, quote, outbreak with Nina's help are his businesses. His businesses will be shut down and quarantined for weeks. He says, I wouldn't be surprised if the city closes some of his other holdings as a precaution if they think his staff is spreading disease. It should take him at least a year to recover financially, and maybe more if the panic lasts long enough. Of course, if the council thinks he helped set up false consortiums, they may never grant him a license to operate again. And she says, I thought you and Nina chose 4 outbreak sites on the staves. Kaz straightened his cuffs. I also had her stop at the menagerie. She smiled then, her eyes red, her cheeks scattered with some kind of dust. It was a smile he thought he might die to earn again. And she says, you were showed mercy and were the better man. There she went again, seeking decency when there was none to be had. Inej, I could only kill Pekka's son once. He can imagine his death 1,000 times. So, chapter 38. Matthias is with Kuwei's body, and there is this mad rush by everybody to get the fuck out, right? Like everybody is trying to get out of the city before the city gets shut down because of this plague alarm. And winds up being sealed up so that they are stuck somewhere that disease is spreading. And he is it seems like it's been successful, this attempt to make it seem like Kuwei has been shot in the heart and died. Nobody checks the actual injury because there are no signs of life. There's no breath, there's no heart rate. So there's no real reason for them to inspect the wound and try and staunch the bleeding or anything. Also, the medic is just completely uninterested in doing anything but saving his own hide at this moment. And there's this guy in a fishing boat who's yelling out that he can take them to the hospital. And this guy has a pregnant wife with him. So the medic at first is like, why would you want to help me get to the hospital? And he's like, well, we need her to get there anyway because she's about to give birth. And having a medic on board the ship with us if she goes early might be helpful. So finally, the 2 Stadwatch that are with them bail. And just the medic and Kuwei and Matthias get into the boat. And of course, it turns out that the woman is Nina and that the guy who is pretending to be the fisherman is Roddy wearing a beard. And I love that, Matthias is wondering if it were possible for Nina to actually have, a fake birth because he just, at this point, he doesn't know what anybody's capable of. There's just so much that they have managed to pull off already that he didn't think was possible. So part of him is just kind of who the fuck knows, And I love that the medic starts to take something out of a case. And Matthias is like, what's that? And the medic says, a sedative. And he says, is that safe for a pregnant woman? And the medic's like, it's for me. Oh, you dum-dum. So they get to the hospital. And the nurse is like, listen, we're locking down for a plague. We're not going to give a bed up to a body. This guy is clearly already dead. Bring him around the back and one of the body men will come and deal with him tonight. By tomorrow, a stranger's body would be ashes and the real Kuwei would be free to live his life without constantly looking over his shoulder. Well, at least help this woman. She's about to. The medic looked around, but Nina and Roddy had vanished. They already went inside, said Matthias. But, the nurse snapped, are you going to stand here all day blocking my doorway or come inside and be of help? I am Needed elsewhere, the medic said, ignoring the nurse's disbelieving look. The rudeness of some people, he sputtered. I am a scholar of the university. I love this. This guy is like, everybody's assuming, oh, you're here to help, obviously. A doctor, there's a plague happening, no doubt. And he's just like, nope, bye. So Matthias is jogging to meet the others at Zensbridge, where they're going to be working on reviving Kuwei. And on his way, somebody shouts to him, says his full name, and he turns around and realizes that it is the young Driscoll who was staring him down during the auction. I charge you with treason, he said, voice breaking. The hand he held his pistol in was shaking. High treason against Fjerda and your Driscoll brothers. Matthias held up his hands. I am unarmed. You are a traitor to your land and your God. We haven't met before. You killed my friends in the raid on the ice court. I killed no Driscoll. Your companions did. You're a murderer. You humiliated Commander Broom. I joined when I was even younger than you. I know what it's like there, the thoughts they put in your head, but you don't have to do this. I charge you with treason. I am guilty, said Matthias. I've done terrible things, and if you wish it, I will walk back to the church with you right now. I will face your friends and commanding officers, and we can see what justice may come. You're lying. You even let them kill that shoe boy you were supposed to protect. You're a traitor and a coward. And then, immediately, Matthias thinks to himself, good, he believed Kuwei was dead. Can we just talk about that for a second? He is in front of somebody from where he used to live and the place he took pride in. They are accusing him of treason and ready to kill him. And all he thinks is, I'm really glad it looks like the plan is coming off without a hitch. This is a real change. The Matthias that we knew at the start of this book would not be taking this attitude, or the start of the last book, rather. Like, he is so much more concerned with the overall well-being of everybody, rather than his own, immediate potential humiliation or getting hurt. Do not be afraid. Fear is how they control you. We'll find a way to change their minds. The boy had only been with the Order for 6 months. He could be reached. There's so much in the world you don't have to be afraid of if you would only open your eyes. You don't want to hurt me. I know. I was like you once. I'm nothing like you, said the boy, his blue eyes blazing. Matthias saw the anger there, the rage. He knew it so well, but he was still surprised when he heard the shot. And I have to admit, I assumed, because this has been done a couple of times in this book, that Matthias wasn't really shot. It was a big surprise when it turned out he had been. Because I just figured somebody else pulled the trigger somewhere else and he thought it was this boy and it wasn't. Or the boy, took the shot and he, managed to dodge it, or it just wasn't fatal. Who knows? But no. So we go to Nina. And she is with Kaz, and they are going to meet up with the other Grisha to try and revive Kuwei. And he is really, out, Kuwei is. He is so far... He has been so far brought under by this drug that they're a little bit worried that they might not be able to get him back out of this again. Some part of Nina knew the world might be safer if Kuwei died, but she also knew that if someone else unlocked the secret of Parem, he was Ravka's best chance at an antidote. They'd fought to free him from the ice court. They'd schemed and connived and struggled so that he could be safe to pursue his work. Kuwei was hope, and he was a boy who deserved a chance to live without a target on his back. So they have this antidote, but they injected it once, and it didn't do anything. And they're injecting a second one, and it still doesn't. So Sturmhond calls out Zoya. And I love this because throughout this scene, Nina keeps looking at Sturmhond and being like, God, he seems familiar. Where do I know this guy from? And of course we know that he's royalty and she must be like familiar with him somehow. I don't know where Nina's from in the hierarchy, of the Ravkins, but I assume that she must have met him. So what Zoya does is summons lightning. She becomes a human defibrillator. It's the raddest thing, and it's so cool the way it's described. Zoya had her hands out and her eyes closed. The air felt suddenly cool and moist. Inej inhaled deeply. It smells like a storm. Zoya opened her eyes and brought her hands together as if in prayer, rubbing her palms against each other briskly. I think she's summoning lightning. Nina felt the pressure drop, tasted metal on her tongue. Is that safe? Asked Inej. Not remotely, said Sturmhond. Has she at least done it before? Said Kaz. For this purpose? Asked Sturmhond. I've seen her do it twice. It worked splendidly. Once. Ready? Zoya asked. Genya shoved a thickly folded piece of fabric between Kuwei's teeth and stepped back. With a shudder, Nina realized it was to keep him from biting his tongue. So she zaps him once, his body moves, but he does not wake up. His chest remained motionless, and she has to do it one more time. What is this even supposed to do? Asked Inej. Shock his heart into returning to its rhythm, said Genya, and the heat should help denature the poison. Or kill him, said Kaz. Or kill him, conceded Genya. Now, said Zoya, her face determined. Nina wondered if she was anxious for Kuwei to survive, or if she just hated to fail at anything. I love that. Because, it might very well be that second one. His body bent like a green branch and caught by an unforgiving wind, and once more collapsed against the stretcher. Kuwei gasped, eyes flying open. He struggled to sit up, trying to spit out the wad of fabric. Thank the saints, said Nina. Thank me, said Zoya. Oh, Zoya, I love this. And they get to tell Kuwei that everything has gone off properly. The shoes saw him die. The auction is over. Everything has gone according to plan. And Kuwei just collapses into tears. Bless him. I just forget about him sometimes, that he's really was thrust into this with no vested interest other than getting out alive. Whereas everybody else is going to get paid, Meanwhile, as he starts crying, Nina says to him, I know what you mean, kid. I really love this little scene of everybody, having this moment of, it's victory, but it's a little bit strained because they aren't friends, and this is a weird business relationship that they've engaged with. Let's see. The privateer turned back to the bottle boat and gazed down at Nina. His eyes were an odd color, and his features didn't quite seem to fit together properly. In case you're tempted not to return, I want you to know you and your Fjerdan are welcome in Ravka. We can't estimate how much Parem the Shoe may still have, or how many of those Kergud soldiers they've made. The Second Army needs your gifts. Nina hesitated. I'm not what I was. You're a soldier, said Zoya. You're Grisha, and we'd be lucky to have you. Nina's jaw dropped. That almost sounded like praise. And this is when Nina looks at Stormhond and is kind of he just really looks. No. She senses the royalty, but then she's nah, that can't be it. Nina strained to see over the lip of the canal. What's taking Matthias so long? Do you think that medic gave him trouble? But then she saw him striding towards her across the empty square. He raised his hand in greeting. She leapt from the boat and ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. Drusha, he said against her hair, you're all right. Of course I'm all right. You're the one who's late. I thought I wouldn't be able to find you in the storm. Nina pulled back. Did you stop to get drunk on the way here? No, he said, and then he kissed her. Matthias! Did I do it wrong? No, you did it splendidly, but I'm the one who always kisses you first. We should change that, he said, and then he slumped against her. Matthias? It's nothing. I needed to see you again. Matthias, oh, saints. The coat he'd been holding fell away, and she saw the bullet wound in his stomach. His shirt was soaked with blood. She starts screaming for help. The streets were empty. And Inej comes up and she tells her he's been shot. And he says, all I wanted was to see you once more. Get Kuwait, Nina said to Inej, or Kaz, he has Parem. You have to get it for me. I can save him. I can fix him. But was that even true? If she used the drug, would her power return to what it had been? She could try. She had to try. Matthias grabbed her hand with a surprising strength. It was wet with his own blood. No, Nina. I can fight it a second time. I can heal you, and then I can fight it. It's not worth the risk. It's worth every risk, she said. Matthias, I need you to save the others. What others? The other Druskel. Swear to me you'll at least try to help them, to make them see. We'll go together, Matthias. We'll be spies. Genya will tailor us. We'll go to Fjerda together. I'll wear all the ugly knitted vests you want. Go to Ravka, Nina. Be free as you were meant to be. Be a warrior as you always have been. Just save some mercy for my people. There has to be a Fjerda worth saving. Promise me. I promise. The words were more sob than sound. I have been made to protect you. Even in death, I will find a way. Bury me so I can go to Gel. Bury me so I can take root and follow the water north. I promise, Matthias, I'll take you home. Nina, he said, pressing her hand to his heart. I am already home. The light vanished from his eyes. His chest stilled beneath her hands. Nina screamed, a howl that tore from the black space where her heart had beat only moments before. She searched for his pulse, for the light and force that had been Matthias. If I had my power, if I'd never taken Parem, if I had Parem. She felt the river around her, the black waters of grief. She reached into the cold. Matthias's chest rose. His body shook. Come back to me, she whispered. Come back. Come back, she demanded. He breathed. His eyes fluttered and opened and shone black. Matthias, she whispered, speak my name. Nina. His voice, his beautiful voice, it was the same. She clutched his hand, searching for him in that black gaze, but his eyes had been the ice of the north, palest blue, pure. This was all wrong. Inej was kneeling beside her. Let him go, Nina. I can't. Inej placed her arm around Nina's shoulder. Let him go to his God. He should be here with me. You will meet him again in the next life, said Inej, but only if you suffer this now. They were twin souls, soldiers destined to fight for different sides, to find each other and lose each other too quickly. She would not keep him here, not like this. In the next life, then, she whispered. Go. She watched his eyes close once more. Farvel, she said in Fjerdan. May Gel watch over you until I can once more. Chapter 40. Matthias. Matthias was dreaming again. Dreaming of her. The storm raged around him, drowning out Nina's voice, and yet his heart was easy. Somehow he knew that she would be safe. She would find shelter from the cold. He was on the ice once more, and somewhere he could hear the wolves howling. But this time he knew they were welcoming him home. Well, fuck you guys. I hate you. Go to hell. This sucks. Why do you do this to me? You sadists. This is sad. Seriously, this is like my worst fear in the whole world. Something happening to Owen and I hate this. Brutal. You guys, I hate you so much. So, I guess I'll go and cry by myself now, since my time is up. No thanks to Jaime for commissioning this episode, you evil, mean head. Alright, guys. I'm gonna go. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.